to 10. South Africa's long-standing 2013 memorandum, we'll get to that in just a moment, but let's focus on this. We mentioned it earlier on, a conversation around new analysis that's been provided by fibre-network operator Fibretime. South Africa's population, it says, may well exceed 95 million, far more than the official figures that have been given in a challenge of the last census. Fibretime says its own data and remote sensing analysis reveals a much larger population than previously thought. Meanwhile, official numbers by Statistics South Africa places the population at 63.1 million, a figure based on their mid-year population estimates, which indicated a population that is largely Black African and with the majority living in the Gauteng province. So we engage now the former Statistician General for South Africa, Dr. Pali Lehohla. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Dr. Lehohla. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, your assessment, given your experience. You're an expert in this area. Can one really use AI to census South Africa's population in the manner that they have?
You see, one should respect artificial intelligence, but it looks like we are coming to a situation where the metaphor might well be artificial intelligence and a stupidity original. So it looks like artificial intelligence is supposed to hide stupidity. When estimates as irrelevant as this ones of 95 million come, as a consequence of saying we used artificial intelligence, you really delve into serious stupidity. That original stupidity comes as an original attribute of people who actually think that artificial intelligence can substitute lack of knowledge and lack of deep understanding of statistics.
So traditionally then...
By the way...
yes, go ahead.
You see, for you to count as a sense in a census, you got to actually identify the structures on the ground, either using aerial photography or some other method that is rigorous, that tells you that these are dwellings and these dwellings are organized in this kind of way. That's how census is run. You've got to understand those. And it can't be that artificial intelligence suddenly increases the dwellings. I saw the document that says they are doing this fiber thing in some spaces across the country. There are areas that have been counted by Stats SA corresponding to those areas that they did the work. The question that has to be asked is how many structures did they establish on the ground? How many of those structures were actually occupied by people? And what was the average household size in those structures where there is correspondence at the area level, like Soweto, with the count of Statistics South Africa? If they then, out of that, estimate that there would have been 95, I mean, they have not gone to identify whether the structures have people, and if they have people, how many people per structure there are. Because that's a fundamental arithmetic that we have to apply before you even extrapolate to the rest of the country.
And that's what I was wondering, if they are being speculative about the use of services and how they then account for, as you mentioned, the remote sensing, geospatial mapping, because it is possible that what is down, and this is my very pedestrian thinking, that there may be more people in that house who don't necessarily live there.
Well, in 2001, 2002, as we are preparing for census of 2021, we actually looked at the structures and then looked at how many dwellings, how many structures were empty. and what was the cause of the empty structures. And there were quite substantial number of empty structures. So if you do not visit each dwelling, you may be doing a count on dwellings and not actually finding that there are people in there. So, I mean, the issue really is the South African population has been measured from 1860-something when the first census of South Africa was undertaken. It would have excluded blacks, that's very true. From about 1910, a number of censuses have been undertaken, up to the one of 2022 by the Statistician General. Adjustments as necessary have been made to come to an estimate of that population. Besides the numbers of the people, there are births and deaths. And then out of that, you estimate what the projection of the population based on births and deaths, a demographic model. None of them come to close to a population of 95 million.
So,
regardless of whether it was under apartheid or under a democratic government, all these models are coherent and consistent. You cannot suddenly change the fertility or change the mortality patterns. These things have an organic motion in them that artificial intelligence cannot inspire. So to come with a 95 million, almost a third, bigger population than that we have, it is anchored in the entire economic system. And the economic system has to correspond with these numbers. There is no economic system that suggests that South Africa would have 95 million people.
So in 2022,
it uses the labor force surveys, where you have a certain number of people that are working. In a 95 million population, how many are actually in the age group 15 to 64? They have to answer those questions. And then what is the unemployment of South Africa? So the architecture, the architecture of statistics is an architecture embedded in science. And artificial intelligence is a product of statistical estimations, is an output of a regression model. So it's not this thing that just comes out of the air, and statisticians are quite aware of that.
So in 2022, what happened at Lehohla? Because there were reports of, and in fact there were public criticisms of what was perceived as a 31% undercount. Was there such a discrepancy? And if that was the case, was it an issue of statistical governance perspective?
No. When you run a census, you are bound to miss people. You are bound to double count others. You are bound to have all kinds of combinations. And the statistical theory is applied to estimate the number that you have missed. So those you miss in the census, those you miss in the instrument that you use to calibrate the omissions, those that are only missed in the census but captured in the PS, and so on and so on. And that matrix gives you by area, by type of dwelling, type of settlement, by province, by everything, what it is that we have missed. That's why the Statistician General could confidently say we have missed 31%. And that 31% that we missed, we have adjusted for in the following way, by area, by province. So it is true, yes, there was an omission of 31%, but that was adjusted for through a scientific process, a scientific statistical process, not a process of cables that are being dug in the soil. And then you think that you are estimating the number of people. That's an insult to the profession. That's why I'm saying, my goodness me, artificial intelligence, stupidity, original. That's when you use these things without any knowledge of science or any statistics. And you just fall into it as artificial intelligence. And when you do that, you reflect and you reveal stupidity original.
What are the dangers of this inaccurate demographic data, and could it
It's
have?
not only the danger of an inaccurate data, it is how the politics of our time actually decimate evidence and the science of evidence. You see it with Trump. And with these kinds of things that come, it will not be unsurprising that the politics of South Africa start questioning this. Here is the problem. Once you underestimate or overestimate, or you play with data in the way that these guys are playing with it, the allocation of resources gets skewed. There is no rationality in the allocation and use of resources. And that's a very dangerous. We are already in a very slippery slope in South Africa, where the politics of our time don't even use data anyway. Now, when you bring these voodoo numbers, you then go into a very, very dangerous terrain. We have a very solid statistical institution, well respected around the world, one which has not been challenged, fortunately, by the politicians. But these voodoo scientists that pronounce artificial intelligence as the in thing, without any respect for methodological processes on which artificial intelligence is grounded, which is statistical, basically. For them to parachute in the way they have, it's an insult to the profession. And it's a very dangerous thing. And that's where you see artificial intelligence as being a very dangerous thing when it is not regulated.
What could be the possible motive to your mind?
Usually people who delve and work with money do a lot of things that are wrong. One of those, I must say, is the internal engine combustion, the ICE, internal combustion engines. Even before how this work was matured, people with money saw money out of it and popularized it. That is why today you spend only, in a 1 rand that you spend, you only get a benefit of 20 cents. And the rest of the heat that is produced is the one that is boiling the world. So when you bring money and politics and stupidity, all those trump signs. And when they trump signs, they lead to a very, very bad system of living, very, very bad social system. And these people who are talking about artificial science and coming with a third more population than we have in South Africa, that's voodoo, voodoo. I wouldn't call voodoo statistics. There's no voodoo statistics. Statistics are statistics. But artificial intelligence gone wrong is what has happened. And usually you find when you peel off those things, you find financial interests in that kind of situation.
Not mincing his words, former Statistician General of South Africa, Dr. Pali Lehohla, speaking to us about this study analysis that's been put out by a fiber network operator, Fibretime, saying that South Africa's population could be more than 95 million. And you've heard Dr. Lehohla saying it's absolute rubbish. And he just says, really, it's stupidity that is informing